Hello, welcome to the Sutliffian Report. Today we are going to have fun going through the Sharia and doing some critical thinking, and we have some crazy news stories after that. If you haven't paid attention to the news in the United States, if you're from another country, you may not have heard that Biden's wife gave a full-on kiss on the lips to Kamala Harris's husband during the State of the Union. We'll talk about things like that afterwards. Like I said, crazy news stories. As this is a Christian news show, I always want to start with a reading from God's Word, and I'm going through Genesis, and I'm going to read you. This is day 51 for me, and I'm reading from Genesis 18, 1 to 15. And the Lord appeared unto him, talking about Abraham, in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground and said, My Lord, if now I found favor in your sight, pass not away, I pray you, from your servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, and I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort you your hearts. After that you shall pass on, for therefore are you come to your servant. And they said, So do as you have said. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah and said, Make ready quick 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abraham ran into the herd and fetched a calf, tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hastened to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. And they said unto him, Where is Sarah your wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto you according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah your wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old, well, stricken in age, about 100 years old, people, okay? It ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of woman. Okay, they're saying she's gone through menopause, okay? Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I'm waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, of being old so also? And the Lord said unto Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I surely bear a child when I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. They're talking about a year down the road, so keep in mind. Then Sarah denied, saying, I didn't laugh. She was afraid. There's God outside. Oh, you think he doesn't? No. Yeah, okay. But she did laugh, the Lord says. Of the 3 men present, Abraham immediately recognized God in the flesh. This is the pre-incarnate image of Christ. Abraham had seen God before. Abraham knew him. And like before, he is compelled to rush and serve him. He ran to meet him a short distance. They rushed to get the best food he could offer. There's a need for Abraham not to impress, but to give his absolute best to God. Sarah laughs when she hears God's promise of her carrying a child. No matter how many times she's heard this promise from Abraham, her husband, and probably heard his own admission at laughing at God's promise, she can't help but laugh at the impossibility of herself bearing a child her age. Abraham is 100 years old. She can't be too far behind. It's a truly loving couple that reflect each other's thoughts. They both laugh. That's why Abraham's son is called Isaac. It's because Abraham laughed, not because Sarah laughed. It says in the Bible that Abraham laughed, and then God names Isaac. Take a look at that if you want to look at 17:17, Genesis 17:17, where you'll see that. Sarah, however, foolishly in the presence of God denies this. God needed her to see he can do the impossible. That's important. Sometimes God just wants to do that, show you he can do that. Sometimes we have to express our disbelief in order to grow past it. Remember that Isaac earned his names, again, from his father's laughter first. Think about this time God spent with Abraham and Sarah as you do when a friend is on a business trip and he has to stop nearby. Your friend will stop and visit. This is an act of love and caring. It's an act of maintaining a friendship. Such a visit is unnecessary, at the same time necessary, because we desire the closeness of those we love. God loved Abraham. He was passing through on business. on his way to Sodom and Gomorrah. This seems somewhat silly when you think about it. Think of God visiting while on a business trip, but that's the situation. God came and saw Abraham at the door of his tent and was on his way to deal with the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah. Think about that. This actually happened. This visit is an expression of love. It's an expression of maintaining a relationship, not only with Abraham, with his wife, Sarah. All the other times he's come, he's spoke directly to Abraham. This time he involves Sarah. Think about it. Dear Lord Jesus, how is it that you love us so when we so easily put aside you and do things we know are wrong? Lord, forgive our own stupidity. Help us to be on the right path. Help us to do the right things, Lord. Smack us upside the head to get us on the straight way if you need to, Lord. And just keep working on us, molding us, Lord, so that we can become great examples of that love that you have for us. In your name, Lord Jesus, amen. Now, I have before us what I consider some of the funniest and some of the best stuff I have yet to present on Shariah. And this is only I consider this short. I could have done more, but this should blow your mind. So we're on part 3, and I do want to do a little bit of a rewind. And let me get my mouse in the right spot. Okay. So last week, a couple weeks ago, last thing I did was a2.7. And I just want to point out some of the stuff here. The highlighted part here, it says they concur that devoting one's time to sacred knowledge is better than devoting it to voluntary fasting or prayer, better than saying Allah, exalted as Allah above limitation. All right. Again, they concur that devoting one's time to sacred knowledge is better than devoting it to voluntary fasting and prayer. So secret knowledge equals higher rewards. And this is another expression of Gnosticism. You're going to keep hearing me say that today because Shariah keeps talking about it. So, hey, if Islam keeps talking about Gnosticism, it's not my fault for seeing it. They just keep putting it in. So I'm laughing about this all the way to the bank because, I have to give credit to where credit is due. Lloyd DeJong pointed this out to me. I'm still having a good laugh about this because it's so on target that it makes me laugh when I think about it. All right, let me get back here. I'm moving my mouse too many places. All right. And the next thing that we covered was, they talk about scholars being the heirs of the prophets. And I do want you to think about that. If scholars are the heirs of the prophet, what does that actually mean? And then it says knowledge is an attribute of Allah. Wait a minute. Let's think about this. This scripture says, surely Allah was knowing. Hey, Larry, if I said you knew something, am I implying, that in the past, if I'm using past tense, that Larry was knowledgeable about something. Am I saying you don't know it anymore?
That would be my understanding, yes.
Okay. So Allah doesn't know things. I mean, 875. Okay, so 875 says Allah knows all things, but 432 says Allah was knowing. Which one is it? All right. How about this one? Allah was knowing, aware. Allah was knowing, wise. Quran 4:111. Wait a minute. So, did Mo not know if Allah was wise? Or maybe he was talking about himself. He was knowing. And wait a minute. Does he or doesn't he? This still makes me laugh. All right. Again, the question is, does Allah know or does he have dementia today? Again, it's in Sharia. It's in the Quran. So these are questions. If you're putting on your critical thinking cap, You have to ask these questions.
Hey, Paul,
Yes,
I would say if you read the Quran, you would get your answer to these questions.
that's exactly it. And you learn that Allah is really not knowing and wise because he can't even put the prophets in chronological order. It's Allah has a chronological disorder. And as far as that, I'm going to skip over here. And the other point I saw here, the reason I wanted to start is because we got to number 7. And that's pretty much where we stopped here. And this is from, and we're going off of, this is off of a2.7. Okay. And all right, sacred knowledge, meaning the knowledge we are discussing is a communal obligation. So communal obligation, it says right here, is superior to personal obligation. Think about that. If communal knowledge of what's important for the community is more important than what's important for the person, that puts the community above the person. So the individual doesn't have as much value as your community. And this is a huge difference between the Judeo-Christian God and the concept of Islam's Allah. Islam's Allah is more interested in the community than he is in the individual person. I find this a huge contradiction. To say one is superior, I'm still kind of mind numbed on this one. And you're going to see this other part down here. It says the obligation of the individual is restricted to himself. Let's talk about this. I'm going up to E3.2 because it refers to that here. All right. You see the part right here, that reference, okay? A second distinction between obligatory acts is made on the basis of who is called upon to perform them, namely, whether an act is personally obligatory or communally obligatory. A personally obligatory act is what the lawgiver requires from each and every morally responsible person. It's insufficient for someone to perform such an act on another's behalf. Okay. We still don't know if the lawgiver is Allah or Muhammad, because Sharia says the lawgiver is Allah or Muhammad. So if they can't define it, you have to sit there and wonder, are they the same person? Because it's still logically correct with that word or. You can have both be correct. It says something. Personally obligatory act. And they're talking about morally responsible people. And again, I want to point out this part. It's insufficient for someone to perform such an act on another person, such as the prayer. Well, in zakat, the pilgrimage, keeping agreements, and avoiding wine or gambling. Wait a minute. If it's insufficient for someone to perform one of these acts, why does Sharia say in J1.10, those able to perform the Hajj by sending someone in their stead? They have a whole section of Sharia on this. Are they lying to us here? It's insufficient for someone to perform such an act on another person's behalf, as they're the ones who mentions pilgrimage. I mean, I kind of get the prayer part. It's kind of hard to have someone do your own praying for you. I can get that. I can get the idea of someone not being able to pay your portion of zakat. That makes sense. But someone can do this part for you? And again, they're saying you can't, but again, they're saying you can. It says the second type of being able to perform Hajj is when one may fulfill it by sending another one in one's place. That one is unable to ride there, or is able, with great difficulty because of chronic illness, old age, whatever. And that one either has the money to hire someone Think about that. You got the money to hire someone. You got the money to send them. Has someone to obey. Has someone perform the rites. But again, these are contradictions. My question here is, if this statement about personal obligation is inaccurate, can we know what's personally obligatory if Sharia is already contradicting Sharia? I mean, which is true. I mean, is it not true? Why did you put a whole section in here saying you can when you just said you can't? Critical thinking. Anybody else have questions on this one?
Well, I think this is just typical Islam. What I've been told about, a lot is that, he wants people to be merciful, but yet at the same time, if somebody doesn't want to be merciful, they can take vengeance if they really want to. So to me, it just seems like Islam is very wishy-washy and really doesn't have any type of clear standard. At least that's my understanding of Islam.
There's, this duality that they get away with, contradictions, holding to contradictory opinions. This is the stuff that actually causes mental illness and holding two conflicting beliefs. The human brain is not made to do that. It actually does create situations for mental illness if you hold two contradictory beliefs. All right, I'll get back over here. I mean, this is the point that I said. Sharia lies to Muslims if you don't read all of it. What if we never read past this? You wouldn't know that you can send someone for Hajj? These are important things, to look at, the pilgrimage. A3.0, again, Nawawi is commentary. It says, this is an interesting section. The blameworthiness of seeking sacred knowledge for other than Allah. Know that what we have mentioned about the merit of seeking sacred knowledge only applies to the seeker, who thereby intends Allah himself, not some end concerned with this world. I want you to think about that. What does that mean? Let's keep going. Whoever seeks it for worldly aims such as money, leadership, rank. So if you're seeking sacred knowledge for the purpose of getting money, if you're seeking sacred knowledge for getting prestige, fame, people inclined towards them, defeating opponents, debate, and similar motive is blameworthy. I have to admit, this kind of makes sense. It does. It's like if you're studying the Bible for the purposes of getting fame or money or any of these things, this would make sense. But let's read a little farther on. When the basic reason is Allah, but other motives, I can't play words. Here's where we start to run into problems. Allah Most High says, they're claiming Allah says this. They're claiming it's in Quran 42:20. Thank you, Dragon. It says, whoever wants to cultivate the afterlife, we shall increase for him his tillage, while whoever wants to cultivate this world, we shall give him of it, but he will have no share in the next. Now, for anybody who's into anime, who wants to look at other things out there, this word cultivate is used a lot in the reincarnation belief. They talk about cultivating, putting, you're basically, in this concept of cultivating, you are gathering good karma basically to yourself, and you're gathering all this good stuff into yourself. That's the cultivating, and you're doing it within your person. And so that requires a lot of meditation. That's why this word gets used a lot. So I found, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, did they, this is the thing I have to ask. Are they pulling stuff from other faith structures when they wrote this? So was Islam in the same area as Buddhism? Yes, we know that to be true. Were Buddhists and Hindus, did they have these similar beliefs? Yes, they both do. Did Islam confront Islam? Did Islam confront Hinduism before this got written? Yes. So now you have to start asking yourself: are they pulling this from other religions? And I think that's another thing, because that would also testify to this being related to Gnosticism, because you're cultivating. Why would you be cultivating? I mean, if you're seeking knowledge, cultivating makes sense. Now, here's the word that if you study the Quran, this word, this is the promise Allah gives for those who cultivate the afterlife. Allah promises sex, sexual activity. By the way, does anybody think this is a promise given to women too? This is not a promise to women. So why women would want to study? This is not a promise to women. This is a promise to men. Tillage. Throughout the Quran, this verse, look at it, Quran 42:20. Whoever wants to cultivate the afterlife, we shall increase his sexual activity. While whoever wants to cultivate this world, we shall give him of it. Ooh. Allah promises sex. Isn't that a pretty perverted God? You would never find that in the Bible. Oh, if you read the Bible, you get, oh, no, it's not in there anyplace. You won't find that promise anyplace. If you read the Bible, no, that's not in there. There is promises of wisdom and promises of spiritual growth and promises that have to do with your growth spiritually and becoming closer to God. But there's nothing here in the Bible about sexual activity as a promise. This one will always make me laugh. And believe it or not, Allah will bring this up again. Thank you, Allah, for promising sex to Muslims. All right. And I apologize. This is a little smaller than I wanted it. Let me make the screen just a little bigger today.
Hey, Paul, before we move on, can I ask one question?
Sure.
I was just curious, in the Quran or in the Sharia, does it mention anything about when Muslims go to paradise that they will spend time with God or, kind of get to know God more? Or is it just all about sex?
Well, the only thing that's ever promised in the Quran, as far as heaven, is sex. And it's a promise to the men. There's no, I haven't seen anything in the Quran that promises anything to women. I mean, Muhammad says that hell is filled with women, and he says most of them are in hell. He doesn't really speak of what anything women get in heaven, and that is problematic. If he thinks hell is so filled with women, and then he creates these other concept of females called houris, which are not real human females. If you can see through somebody and see their bones, and those are the best of women who are eternal virgins. I mean, that's really gross when you start thinking about it. That's your concept of beauty, that you can see through someone and see their bones and they're, I'm sorry, that is just too gross for me. Not something I would consider beautiful. In fact, I'd consider it disgusting, but that's Allah's idea of beautiful. And promise, as far as, there's nothing in the Quran that promises anything more than sex. So I was wondering if I can get you guys to read this part for me. This is that passage. This is the promise. This is chapter 2. And we are reading Sahih Bukhari. Sahih International. I'm going to read the first one. We're talking about this cultivation and tillage. It says, your wives are a place of sowing of seed for you. Whoa, sowing of seeds. Tillage. Yet, so come to your place of cultivation. However, you wish, and you put forth righteousness for yourselves, and fear Allah, and know that you will meet him and give good tidings to the believers. Quran. Think about this. Pickthall. Your women are a tilth. This is the same verse. If you were reading this and you saw these, you would think these verses are not from the same translation at all. They're not from the same. I mean, they're so different. You have to sit there wondering, how can they be so different? Pickthall. Your women are a tilth for you to cultivate. So go to your tilth. Okay, go to your women, have your sex, go to your tilth as you will, and good deeds before your souls, and fear Allah, and know that you will one day meet him. Okay, again, a promise of tillage. Somebody want to read Yusuf Ali?
Yeah, I can. You're at,
Okay.
just make sure I'm on the right one. You're at 223, right?
Yes.
Okay. It says, your wives are as a tilth unto you. So approach your tilth when or how ye will. But do some good act for your souls beforehand, and fear Allah, and know that ye are to meet him in the afterlife, and give these good tidings to those who believe.
Sharon, you want to read Shakir? Or is it too small? I'm hoping it's not.
It is pretty small, but I think I can get it.
Okay.
Your wives are a tilth for you. So go into your tilth when you like, and do good beforehand for yourselves, and be careful of your duty to Allah, and know that you will meet him and give good news to the believers.
So, Sharon, having read that, is there any promise to a female there for learning something?
I don't see any promise except being a slave.
That's a sex slave, yeah. Again, there's no marriage in the Quran, just so people understand that. There is no marriage in the Quran. There is the F word, which, yeah, that word nikah is the F word. There is no marriage in the Quran. It's all about sex. So, yeah. Shakir, your wives are a till for you. Go to your Muhammad Sarwar. Your wives are fields for you. It seems like they're trying to draw this out and not be as graphic. You may enter your fields from any place you want. Really, speaking of the women, is this demeaning, ladies? Is this not demeaning to be talked about as something a plow can go? I mean, they're talking about using you as, I mean, you're just being used. Is this not demeaning to women? This next passage, this next part, again, this is all Quran chapter 2. What we say, 23, Larry? Yeah, it was 223, right?
Yes.
Your wives are a tilth to you, for you. So go to your tilth. Here it is in yellow. Have sexual relations with your wives in any manner, so long as it is bleep. I had to cover that because I don't want to, as a Christian news show, I don't want anyone to see this. This is, it's beyond disgusting. They're too graphic. Again, other translations don't mention this. I'm just going to say too sexually explicit. And that's the kind of stuff you find in the Quran. It says when or how you will, and send good deeds. This is the point. Allah keeps giving promises. of sexual activity for sacred knowledge. Sorry, getting gross when I start thinking about it. If that's the best Allah can promise, I mean, to me, it means he doesn't have much. That's all he can promise. Let's keep going. It says, whoever wants the present world, we hasten for him therein whatever. We will, again, this is from the Sharia, we will for whomever we want, and we then consign him to hell. Roasting in it is condemned and rejected. Quran 17:18. Verily, your Lord is ready at ambush. Quran 89:14. They were not ordered except to worship Allah and make their. So here's what I have a friend who keeps saying to me, we need to give the Christian perspective. So I'm just going to get off the brand just so everyone can read this with me. Let me turn that brand off for just a second. All right. So the Christian scriptures say this about knowledge. Consider the lilies, how they grow, they toil not, they spin not. And yet, as I say unto you, Solomon in all his glory, who was supposed to be the wisest king, was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothes the grass, which is from day to day in the field, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you? O you of little faith, and seek not what you shall eat or what you shall drink, neither be of doubtful mind. For all these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knows what you have need of these things. But rather seek you the kingdom of God. Oh, so we're told to seek sacred knowledge. And all these things shall be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that you have and give alms, and provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that fails not, where no thief approaches, neither moth corrupts. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. This is a huge contradiction to what we've been learning. Allah promises sex in this world for you learning. God promises you treasure in heaven. This is a huge difference. Allah is definitely not the kind of God that's worth worshiping if you talk about the hereafter. I mean, treasure in the hereafter. Is that better than sex today? Because sex is fleeting. How about this one? And I have one more here. Just a second before it goes out. 89:14. Now this is Usama's translation. So I thought this was interesting. Surely your Lord is ever watchful. What do you think was the intent here of using the word ambush? Because that's not accurate to say ambush. Ever watchful. To me, that says Allah's a peeping Tom. I mean, what's he watching? Is he watching? Is he watching? This is, I get it. If you believe in God and he's always watching you, yeah, I get that. But is that really what they were trying to say when they're saying their Lord is at ambush? He's ready to take you. He's ready to steal from you. He's ready to kill you. That's what ambush means to me. And then they have 98:5. They were not ordered except to worship Allah, making their religion sincere unto him as pure monotheists. But again, Usama Dakdak says the translation actually says this, and they were not commanded except to serve Allah, devoted in the religion to him, Hanifa. All right, these are people who serve one God, and to perform the prayer and bring the legal alms, and this is the worthy religion. Making their religion sincere unto him. So it's a little bit of rewording, but it's not exact. And I have problems with the concept that they would do this. They're claiming, now understand, there is a claim in the beginning of this book, we talked about this the first time we did this, that this is an accurate translation. But even the Quran passages are not translated correctly. What does this say about the people who are testifying this is accurate? I mean, these are things you have to ask in critical thinking, if they're not going to even do that, if they're not going to even translate the Quran correctly for us, can we trust what they translate in Sharia? And this is one of the reasons I'm going to go sit down with Usama in a couple weeks, and we're going to go through some of this. We're going to look for the errors, and I'll have more to share with you as time goes on. But I have a couple weeks with him. I have a week with him, I should say, and we're going to have some fun going through this. All right, we're on to A3.3. Does anybody else want to read? Okay, I guess I am. The prophet said, the first person judged on resurrection day will be a man martyred in battle. Okay, so Allah calls for jihad. First person called on resurrection day will be a man martyred in battle. Okay, so a guy who commits an act of jihad gets called on the first guy called on resurrection day. All right, makes sense. Okay, I can get that. He'll be brought forth. Allah will reacquaint him with his blessings upon him, and the man will acknowledge them, whereupon Allah will say, what have you done with them? To which the man will respond, I fought to the death for you. Yeah, he committed an act of jihad. He died. He went, strapped on a bomb, blew himself up. Yep, he died for Allah. But Allah says, you lie. You fought in order to be called a hero. And it has already been said. Then he will be sentenced and dragged away on his face to be flung into the fire. Ooh. Now you have to ask yourself, do jihadis go to heaven? Ever? Is Sharia saying jihadis who die don't get rewards? Has anybody seen this before? Because this one blew my mind.
This is a surprise. I'm going to tell you the truth, because my take on it has always been that they get on the fast path to heaven, or Allah's heaven. At least that's what they believe, and then they can name 70 more people to follow them.
Yes, but here, I mean, when you read what jihadis say, the reason why they do things, they say they do these things for the purpose. They say they do these things for the purpose of going to see Allah, for the purpose of doing things again. The guy said he did it for Allah. I'm not denying that he's saying that. Allah's turning around and saying, well, you wanted to be called a hero. Is that such a bad thing? I mean, so he's wanting to be called a hero. So what do we say about those guys for Hamas? They kill someone, they get locked up in Israeli prison. Or they get killed by the Israelis for trying to kill one of the Jews, or having successfully killed the Jews. And he did it because he wanted to be a hero for these people who call themselves Palestinians. And now he's getting flung into the fire. According to this, jihadis don't go to heaven. I mean, there's so many who believe this stuff, yet they don't realize if you do this in any way for yourself because you want to be called a hero, you went out there and did this because you thought it would benefit you. Sorry, you're going to the fire. I have to sit there and ask questions on this one. This one just blows my mind. I look at that and I'm like, whoa. So I had to think about this one. This next one. Let's keep continuing here. And all right.
So basically, all Muslims go to hell.
Oh yes, it does say that. It is stated in the Quran that all Muslims go to hell. But they're usually all Muslims do go to hell, but it is thought that all jihadis go to heaven. They get to bypass that trip. That's what's thought.
Yeah.
But in the Quran, it actually does say the opposite. And this is, the part that I had thought, I mean, Osama's pointed it out to me more than once, that they all go to hell. But when I was reading this part, I mean, to be called a hero is not to be something dishonorable. That's what I'm trying to get at. When you're doing something heroic, it's not to be called, I mean, again, you're doing it not necessarily for you. Yeah, so what? You want to be called a hero. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Especially when you're saving someone else's life. But their concept of heroic is going out and killing someone.
So in the long run, Allah is actually telling the truth. They all go to hell.
Yes.
My brain is, wow.
That now you see why I'm taking my time going through this, asking these critical thinking questions.
Yeah.
I mean, will Muslims go out there and kill themselves if they read a3.3? You have to ask. Now let's talk about this sacred knowledge part. It says, then a man will be brought forward who learned sacred knowledge, taught it to others. So we're talking about a teacher who recited the Quran. Allah will remind him of his gifts to him, and the man will acknowledge. Hey, Eric, welcome. All right. And let's see here. And got the next one. He'll remind them, and then Allah will say, "What have you done with that sacred knowledge?" Okay, I'm just going to go back here. What have we done with what? Okay, he's learned sacred knowledge, taught it to others, and he's recited the Quran. Allah will remind him of its gifts, and the man will acknowledge them, and then Allah will say, "What have you done with them? Those sacred gifts." The sacred gifts were again, it's the sacred knowledge that he was given. The man will acknowledge, I acquired sacred knowledge, taught it, and recited the Quran for your sake. Allah will say, you learned so as to be called a scholar. You read the Quran so as to be called a reciter. And it has already been said, then he will be sentenced and dragged away on his face to be flung into the fire. Whoa. So obtaining sacred knowledge to become a teacher, a good thing. To obtaining, you want to learn something to become a scholar? I would think that'd be an honorable thing. There's nothing wrong with being a scholar. It's an honorable thing. You want to become a teacher? It's an honorable thing. What does this say to somebody like Yasser Qadi? Oh, you're going to be sentenced and dragged away on your face and flung into the fire. Wait a minute. What did God the God of the Christians promise? You're laying up treasure in heaven. But this one, he's sentencing you to death. So do seekers of sacred knowledge ever get to go to heaven? If you're seeking sacred knowledge in Islam, you have to ask yourself this stuff. Really? Is anything here, I mean, is anybody seeing anything dishonorable about a scholar, about somebody learning something, learning the Quran to become a reciter? Is that dishonorable? Because I don't see it. I mean, I don't see it as dishonorable to learn something so you can do a particular role. I just don't. If you're learning the Quran to become smart, more knowledgeable, which is what a scholar is that dishonorable? If you're out there lying to people, yeah, that's dishonorable. But the promise here is death, eternal death. All right. Okay. Anyone
are they defining what number one, sacred knowledge is, and number two,
yes,
what a scholar is?
Yes, that's yeah. They in the past couple of shows that I've done on this, they define sacred knowledge, and they did a scholar here. We go back. Sacred knowledge. We can go back a couple shows, and we'll talk. Sacred knowledge is learning the in-depth, more stuff on the Quran, the Hadiths, being able to answer those questions. So if you're learning sacred knowledge, and it says it right here, a man will be brought forth who learned sacred knowledge, taught it to others. And this is a person who recites the Quran. I'll remind him of his gifts to him. The man will acknowledge them, and then I will say, what have you done with them? The man will answer, I acquired sacred knowledge, taught it, recited the Quran for your sake.
Because it's sacred knowledge, just to make sure sacred knowledge is just having the knowledge of the Quran, the Hadith, Islam itself. Is that the kind of knowledge you're talking about? This isn't like
they're talking about the higher knowledge. You will probably more see when you have special knowledge. Again, these different layers of knowledge are examples of Gnosticism. So,
that's what it
this
sounds
higher
like.
level knowledge. Yeah, it's higher level knowledge, and you still get to go. You get there. You learn these higher level things, and what do you get? You get to go to hell. And here it says that in number 2, anyone who seeks
somebody like Muhammad Hijab is well on his way then. Ali Dawah.
That's number 2 for Muhammad Hijab, or Ali Dawah. Anyone who seeks sacred knowledge to argue with fools, vie with scholars, or draw people's attention to himself, Muhammad Hijab, will take a place in hell. The most severely tortured on Resurrection Day shall be the scholar who did not benefit from his knowledge. In some ways, I get that part. If you're a hypocrite, to me, that talks about being a hypocrite. Okay. If that's what they're talking about on number 3, I get that. But if they are saying, well, you want to learn it so you could become something, then we have a problem. Again, I see nothing wrong with learning for the purpose of learning. All right, learning so you can, if you want to become a scholar, if you want to become a reciter, you have to learn those things. But if you do it they're saying if you do it for the purpose of becoming a reciter, you're going to hell. I bet you most Muslims who became reciters, they did it for the purpose of becoming reciters. Why do we call people Hafiz? Because they memorized the entire Quran and they can recite it. Oh, did they have to do that on purpose? Yes. Do they have children do this? Yes. Are they sending children? Will children go to hell, according to this passage, if they learned this so they could become a reciter? Yes. This is really problematic. And this is why I say going through this slowly, because it is just so much you have to think about. Critical thinking requires the asking of questions. And they don't do this. The next piece. No servant increased in knowledge and then in desire for the things of this world, save that he increased in distance from Allah. I saw that and I had to stop and think. No servant increased in knowledge and then in desire of the things of this world, said increased in distance from Allah. Anybody have an idea? I'm just going to say what I thought this meant.
It looks like it's saying that if you increase in knowledge, and you have that knowledge, but then you desire things for this world, then what happens is that if you already possess the knowledge and you're desiring things from this world, you're going to increase the distance. You're going to be further away from God.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's why I put his letter A there. You have knowledge, and your worldly. You add worldly desire to that, you go to hell.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that. You're supposed to know better. If that's what this means. But if you look at it a different way, if you grow in sacred knowledge and you learn Islam is false, and you distance yourself from Allah, that's another possibility with this. And if you're learning Islam is false, as the more you learn, is this another guarantee that this is, again, I think it's something to think about. I'm just trying to ask as many questions as I can with these little pieces. where I think this is something to think about. Again, I see nothing wrong with the pursuit of knowledge. And I think that's, pursuit of knowledge is what critical thinking is all about. So it's something to think about. And I am more in tune. I put A up there because that's the first thing I thought about this. If you have knowledge and then your worldly desire takes you to do the opposite of what your sacred knowledge tells you, that makes sense to me. You're separating yourself to hell. That could be what this is all about. But at the same time, if you grew in sacred knowledge and learned Islam is false, and this is distancing yourself from Allah too. So it's something to think about. A4.0, personally obligatory knowledge. Now, this is where things get a little hairy. There are three categories of sacred knowledge. The first is the personally obligatory, which is morally responsible individual learning the knowledge that obligatory acts he must perform cannot be accomplished without, such as how the ablution and prayer are done and so forth. Now, I'm just going to read this last part. Its obligatory characters, how groups of scholars have interpreted the hadith in the Musnad of Abu blah, 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 from Anas, who relates what the Prophet said. All right. Now, here's the problem. Without Sharia, there's nothing telling you how to do wudu or prayer. There's only the command to do so. We're going to get into that eventually. So it's now personally obligatory for all followers of Allah, followers of Islam, all submitters to Sharia, which is basically what Muslim means, to learn Sharia so you can do wudu and prayer, because that is the only place you are taught how to pray. It is the only place that you can be taught how to do these washings, these cleansings. And if you don't know that, you are in trouble because, but wait a minute, this is sacred knowledge. So this is the part that all Muslims must know. So are you being required to read the Quran here? No. Are you being required to read the Hadith? No. Are you being required to read the biographies of Muhammad? No. So you haven't been told to read the Quran. That's personal. You would think that would be personally obligatory. You haven't been told to read the Hadith, which are the sayings. And you haven't been told to read Muhammad's biography, but read Sharia. I would think that would be the last thing. This is the part, anybody else have any thoughts on this? Okay.
Well, I was just curious. I was thinking about this here for a while. There's something that we are learning. When you talk to Muslims, do they follow this is what we're reading, or do you think that when you talk to Muslims, it contradicts what we're reading? Like, to me, this explains the Muslims I talk to a T. Do you guys have a similar experience, or?
It's quite off. It's very, 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 very rare that I meet a Muslim who actually knows what's in the Quran. It's so rare to me. In fact, I'm still thinking about pulling up a Facebook page where I've talking with people, and they can't hold a debate because they can't follow the logical sequence of things because they don't know the Quran. They don't know what's in there and what's not in there. They just argue what they believe is, or they're told is there. They don't realize it's like arguing with an empty bag. There's nothing inside it, but it wants to punch back, and there's nothing. They have nothing but hot air in there, like a balloon. You're punching a balloon. What? It's going to bounce back every time if it's on a string, but you're punching hot air. It's just, yeah, it's sad. I'm going to suggest to everybody listening, you may want to join the Facebook. I think it's Islam is dying, or yeah, it's a very interesting group. So this next part, seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. And we have a problem here, because if we go back to the beginning of this study, it was saying that that's not necessarily true. Sacred knowledge. Okay. Seeking knowledge is an obligation. This does not mean seeking sacred knowledge. So this is important. There's a distinguishing part here. This is where these different levels are being established. Now, this is a hadith. And this is the part that I found humorous. And Eric, I'm going to ask your expertise in a few seconds. It says the meaning of this hadith, though the hadith is not well authenticated, it's weak. Eric, why do they trust weak hadiths?
Well, there's 3 different ratings for hadith according to Al-Tabari when he provided an exegesis of Al-Bukhari, and he says that a weak hadith would be da'if. It would be something that has between a 45% to an 85% chance of being authentic. So if this is weak, it still holds about up to about an 85% chance of being authentic. If it is Hassan, then you have between 86 and 98% authentic. And if it's categorized as Sahih, then it's a 99 to 100% chance it is authentic. So when you start thinking about why would they embrace something like this, is because there's really no other place to get that knowledge from. And so they can just say, okay, even though it's a weak hadith, we can still trust it, because at a minimum, at least it has a 0.5%, or at least it's 50% chance at the bottom end of being authentic. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, it's exactly what I was asking for. I was going to call you and I couldn't. I was at work when I was looking this over, and I was just like, holy cow, this is just, I was looking this over again, and yeah, it made me think. I keep thinking about the seeking knowledge. Thank you, Eric. I'm glad that you did come, because I had set you up. Sorry about that. A4.2. Now this is a big piece. It says, as for the basic obligation of Islam and what relates to tenets of faith, it is adequate. Again, they just said it's good for you to obtain knowledge. Now they're going to say what's adequate for one to believe everything brought by the messenger of Allah. Wait a minute. Everything brought by the messenger of Allah. All right. And to credit with absolute conviction, free of any doubt. Whoever does this is not obliged to learn the evidences of the scholastic theologians. So, absolute conviction, free of any doubt. Are you allowed to question anything here? Because my understanding here is you must believe what we tell you to believe. That's all that's required. No brain activity. No brain activity required. Something seriously wrong. Oh, with that said, let me see if I can pull that. Let me see if I can pull it in. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and see if I can pull in. My friend Eric did this beautiful, beautiful video. And I had promised him I was going to share this video. And I didn't last week because I was relatively busy. This is my other friend Eric. And oh my gosh. And let me find this one. Here we go. And just a second, and I'm going to force this over here. So this is Eric Brazeau's piece. It's called Muslims Must Stop Thinking. And I'm hoping this plays well. I'll turn it up as much as I can here. And let's get this shared out. And hopefully this will work. If it doesn't, please let me know if this is not playing well for you. All right.
Once you admit and submit that the Quran is the book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you are not supposed to question each and every minutiae, law and wisdom.
And you don't try to use your intellect.
Welcome to Fighting Islamophobia. Today, we will learn from one of my favorite Imam intellectual scholars, Abu Musab Wajdi Akhari. This Imam will help us understand more of the true essence of Islam and whether or not intellect leads to the disbelief in Islam.
But it's amazing how many people begin and end and throughout the discussion is, I think. Well, I think Allah will not punish me for not wearing hijab. I think Allah is not the type who will punish people for that.
It seems like this Imam is belittling the fact that people think. Is it true that not thinking helps one to better understand Islam? Perhaps it is.
I think Allah is a God of love and mercy.
So he also mentions that those who think that Allah is Allah is a God of love and mercy might be incorrect. That would then mean that Irshad Manji and Zudi Jasser, Rahil Raza, Salim Mansour, Ibu Patel, who also tell us that Islam is a religion of love, mercy, and compassion, are mistaken. And they who employ it, jihad, which is thinking, it's very serious intellectual thought, should cease and desist from thinking. We'll continue learning more about the essence of Islam from this scholar and Imam.
I think you need to stop thinking, or you need to.
So people should stop thinking. Well, that is something that many people in Western civilization will refuse to do. But some will adopt the religion of Islam and will gladly stop thinking. We will move on to another section here to learn more from this Imam.
It's not right. Brother, I think you don't have the right to speak about this guy, this speaker. You know, to people that judge me and say, why are you judging him? Like, this is the craziest oxymoron.
So this intellectual Muslim Imam man, Akharari, he is now saying that those who tell him that he should not judge others are in fact judging him. But that's not correct. He has made a mistake, a grievous mistake. Perhaps he doesn't speak English that well. These people who have written into his channel have said he should not judge others, but they did not say that he was good or bad. They just suggested he should not judge. That's an opinion. It's not. It's
Hey,
not.
Paul,
Yes.
More
you
from-
turn it.
Can you hear it?
You
World.
I've got it up as high
turn
as
it
I
up
can
some,
go.
Larry.
Allah is the judge.
Okay.
That it's true.
All right. I
Quran
can't.
does say that Allah is the judge.
Okay, so I'm going to stop this if you guys can't hear it. All right. And the point is, he keeps saying that he can't hear, that he keeps saying that this doesn't work. I mean, that you can't, that he keeps talking about how you can't use your brain and stop thinking. And that to me comes back to what we're reading here. Don't use your brain. Don't think. What does that really say? Next time I will just hook up. I have my Bluetooth on today, so I was thinking that might help. But what I've learned in the past is I probably shouldn't use these when I broadcast. All right, because I could just put the mic over there. All right. let's keep going here. This is the prophet did not require of anyone anything but what had just been mentioned. So if the prophet, this Muhammad guy, we're guessing it's Muhammad because in the Quran it never calls him a prophet. So that's what they're telling us it is. We have to take their word for it. It's not in the Quran. So think about that. They say the first four caliphs didn't require it, and let's go down to this next paragraph. What benefits the common people and the vast majority of those learning or possessing sacred knowledge is to refrain from discussing the subtleties of sacred knowledge. And I gotta get my mouse over here. Got the wrong spot. Sorry. Okay. What benefits the people, the common people, and vast majority of those learning sacred knowledge or possessing sacred knowledge is to refrain from discussing the subtleties of sacred theology. Less corruption, difficult to eliminate, finds its way into their basic religious convictions. Rather, it's fitter for them to confine themselves to contentment with the above mentioned absolute certainty. So it's better if you do nothing. That's scary. It's better if you say nothing. It's better if you don't think about it or if you don't talk about it in public. In Christianity, we have this saying, iron sharpens iron. It's in the Bible. Iron sharpens iron. We're talking about, okay, I want to become better at something. Did I just drop out?
For about less than a minute, but yeah, you dropped out for a few seconds.
Okay, all right.
I thought it was
my question here. Oh, I'd say I just all of a sudden it just went into circles, and I am on Ethernet, not on Wi-Fi. So this is kind of mind-numbing to me. All right. Think about this. What does this say? I mean, the scriptures here talk about iron. These Christian scriptures, the Judeo-Christian scriptures talk about iron sharpens irons. If you want to become stronger at something, if you want to become a better man or a better woman, they tell you to find a mentor, someone. The scriptures, the Christian and Judeo-Christian scriptures tell you to find a mentor, someone who can help you become stronger in the faith. And this statement is, shh, don't talk about that. Shh, it might disturb somebody. It might keep them from, it might make them ask questions. Isn't questions what we're supposed to ask? Why do they want us to be silent? This is the part that makes you start to say, what are they really saying? Now, as someone who studied cults, this is what I've been into looking at cults since I was 17, 18 years old, maybe 16. I had a friend who got into cults. And one of the things they would tell people in cults is you can't ask questions unless you're asking something we have a scripted answer for. That's a problem. And once you learn what those scripted answers are, God help them, because they can't go beyond those scripted answers. You ever tried calling for help, the help desk on the phone, and all they know are the scripted answers and they can't get through? This is the problem. All right. And the next piece here.
Well, I was going to add to that, Paul, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Is that the scary thing is that if they do question it and they, they would actually stand up and say, well, wait a second. You're telling me that, in order, if I have a stomach ache, I should drink some camel urine for that.
Yes.
And anything that, believe it, everything brought by the messenger of Allah. So if we look at the hadith, and he told those two clowns to go out there and drink some camel urine, I question that and say, hey, well, that might, cause major infections, cause all kinds of other problems down the road. To do that would again bring down the wrath of those around you, and you could ultimately be killed or ostracized from the community. So the best thing to do is just to keep your mouth shut, even though that you know intuitively that it's wrong. And that, again, is a sign of a cult.
I mean, it's just like okay, so a fly flies in your soup. Make sure you swallow the thing whole so you get both wings, type thing. You want both wings because it's
I never really figured that one out, because how can you actually tell if you're getting the other wing or which ring was? I mean, you see how big eyes are. What if you're old and you don't have glasses? You can't really see, and you get confused.
All I say is don't spit the thing out. that's my answer to that one. Oh, that's so gross. I'm sorry. That is so gross. All right. So here's my big thing here. They are continually talking about secret knowledge. Can't talk about that. That secret knowledge gets you higher rewards. But if you can't talk about it and it's secret, you're talking about higher level rewards. And again, we're talking about Gnosticism. Islam is all about Gnosticism. Gnosticism has been laughed off this planet more times than anything. And that's how we have to start going at Islam. It's secret knowledge that gets you things. Really? Isn't that why we don't hear about Gnosticism anymore? It got laughed off the planet pretty much. Well, that's how we have to start looking at this. This goes on, this section, and this kind of made me laugh too. Our Imam Shafi went to the greatest possible lengths in asserting engaging in scholastic theology is forbidden. What he meant thereby was the heretical scholastic theology that proliferated in his time and put rationalistic theories ahead of Quran and Sunnah, not the science of theology, by which Ash'ari and Mutadari scholars have clarified and detailed the tenets of faith of Sunni Islam, which is an important part of Islamic sciences. I'm going to get into this in a minute. He insistently emphasizes its unlawfulness, the severity of punishment, awaiting those who engage in it, the disgrace of doing it, and the enormity of the sin. Okay. Again, we are talking about secret knowledge, higher rewards, and Gnosticism, but Islam doesn't grasp what science means. And this is extremely important to understand. They're calling these things Islamic sciences. The science of theology, the science of abrogation, the science of the hadiths, the science of the Quran. Let's look at what the word science means. You go to Merriam-Webster dictionary online, and you're going to find this. Science is the knowledge or a system of knowledge covering general truths or the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through scientific method. Eric, we've been talking about historicity. Scientific method, right? Okay. Going on, such knowledge of or such system of knowledge concerned with the physical world and its phenomena. Again, scientific method, okay. Good. A department of systemized knowledge is an object of study. Systemized knowledge, they're saying science of theology. Science, okay, again, let's go back a little bit. Systemized, that means there's a system to go through it. It's not going to be secretive. It's not going to be hidden. There is a method. But yet all this stuff is supposed to be secret. A system of method of reconciling practice ends with scientific laws. And then as an example, cooking's both a science and an art. I'll agree with that 100%. And then they use the term Christian Science. And they're talking about the state of knowledge, as distinguished from ignorance or misunderstanding. Well, I'm not so keen on that one. I think that's barely reaching it. But that was majority of what I wanted to cover today. And I just wanted to point out that is just a little bit bizarre when you start to think about Sharia. There's such a building of secretive knowledge. There's so much that has to do with Gnosticism. Does anybody have any thoughts on this before we go on?
I would just say, repeat what I said earlier. This just explains a lot about the Muslims that I have talked to in the past. I definitely think that it kind of shows me where they're coming from and what they've been taught.
It's a mind number for me, because no matter how many times you run into them, it's a mind number to me, because, and I've just got to hold on a second. I got a background noise in here. All right. Okay. I look at, when I talk to Muslims, no matter how many times I talk to them, it just never ceases to surprise me how little they actually know. And I have to keep telling myself, well, they're only told how to pray. They never are shown the scriptures that back that, because there aren't any. I mean, this is overall, it's problematic.
Look what's come
You
out
know,
of the Muslim world. I mean, as far as inventions.
still waiting for those. There's not very many. There are a few, but there's
They,
just not very many.
I can't remember the one that they used to brag to me when I used to deal with Muslims more. But yeah, I found out that it was basically they learned what they learned at a Christian university.
So, Eric, I'm just curious, on this line of thought, Jaron, you are nailing one of the things that social studies teachers like myself and Eric are trying to fight, the rewriting of history to please Islam. So in the textbooks I have seen that have come out recently, instead of the Chinese inventing calligraphy, all of a sudden, Islam is the inventor of calligraphy. Have you seen that one? I know I have. Let's see. The Islam is now responsible for the astrolabe.
For the what?
The astrolabe. Oh. Have you seen that one?
Be able to. It's those the ship captains used to use it to determine where they were on the ocean. They would look up through a scope and do a back azimuth. And this is what's crazy. Islam is claiming credit for inventing that.
Yes.
But yet they were not a seafaring people group. But yet they invented something that seafaring people group could use. It makes zero sense. Yeah.
And this is, again, this is what is called, believe it or not, this is what is called the Islamization of knowledge. It is an actual graduate level topic that is actually taught and discussed in Islamic concepts of graduate level universities, and you can find books on this. It's an actual discussed theory or topic, I should say. It's well discussed here in the United States and in London. And Ismail Faruqi is the inventor of this concept, and he is one of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood here in the United States and in the UK. So keep that in mind. You got the Muslim Brotherhood guy, and this stuff is now getting into our public schools.
Larry brought up something here. He says, don't forget Muslims discovered America too. Well, the only reason why Columbus was sent out because of the turmoil caused by Muslims. He was sent out to find a new route to India. And they were the cause of the discovery of America.
That's 100% right. And that doesn't get discussed enough. I've actually been present with a person who I never expected to bring that up. I mean, we're not talking about a Christian person. We're not talking about a Jewish person. This person really, as far as I know, doesn't have any concept of God. And I just kind of stood there stunned, and I thanked him afterwards. Like, to actually bring it up. He wanted the kids to understand. This is why we went there. it's not because, I mean, this is why Columbus went. It's not because he couldn't get there normal. I mean, it's just because that way was blocked. It's because the Muslims said, you can't go this way. So they had to find a different way to go. It's rather than taking a chance on fighting pirates. It's a huge statement.
Well, when I teach that in the class, I teach it was the sacking of Constantinople and the cutting off of the Bosporus, where they could no longer trade. Therefore, forcing the Europeans to try to find an alternative route to continue that trade, in which they were becoming extremely wealthy. And so if we can say, okay, indirectly, Islam is indeed responsible for the discovery of the Americas and Christopher Columbus. So we can thank them for that, for sacking Constantinople and forcing the Western Christianized countries to go out and discover the world.
Yeah, we can give them that much credit. You are the cause of us finding new things.
Thank you.
Thank
you for whooping our butt in Constantinople, so we can go out and do something else for a change.
Yeah, we'll wake up eventually, come back and whip your butt, but you know what? We're going to do this first.
Bring that up.
And, another thing is the Barbary pirates. I was in the Marine Corps, and a lot of people don't know who the Barbary pirates were and why the Navy was started and why the Marine Corps was started. And it was like, I can't believe how many people don't know that.
I recommend buying the book, The Six Frigates. It is one of the outstanding books on this topic. I believe it's called The Six Frigates, and I can't remember. I have it on my shelf, and I can't go grab it right now. But it is so highly detailed. You have to sit there. I was spellbound going through that book. There is so much detail about the fight, so much detail about the captains. You sit there like amazed that these men made it through. And and there's a reason. Sharon, why do we call them leathernecks?
Well, I've read where they just say that this is not true, but the leatherneck was so they didn't get their neck sliced off with by a sword. But if you go on the internet, they poo-poo that. And that's not what I learned.
It's part of the uniform. It was part of the uniform.
Yeah.
They had to wear a piece of leather back here so they would be, Oh, come on.
Yeah.
You can find that. I mean, it's just part of the uniform. Yeah.
But here's what's amazing about that story is that when Jefferson dispatched those ships, he didn't tell Congress a thing. What had happened, and the reason why he dispatched them is because the Peshawar in Tripoli at that time had increased the jizya, or the protection money, the protection, the tribute is what the textbook calls it.
They were calling it.
You have to pay them tribute to trade with them. Okay, he had increased it to the point where it was going to account for, I think it was over 25% of our annual budget as a country. And Jefferson's like, well, where does he get off doing this? So Jefferson goes out and gets himself a Quran to try to understand where this motivation came. What is the legal the legal precedent for this? And he goes in there and you look at 929 and looked at 929, and there it is. You either, if you want to deal with us, you either fight or submit jizya. And so Jefferson's, okay, well, that makes sense. Well, we're not going to pay the jizya, so we're going to fight. Well, now all these clowns like Keith Ellison, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib go into public office and they swear themselves in on Jefferson's Quran, being in total ignorance, or maybe they're not in total ignorance. Maybe they're doing it just because they're hoping that most Americans are in complete ignorance of why Jefferson had that Quran to begin with. And it wasn't because he was interested in converting to Islam. He was interested in why he was being required as president to pay this thug in Tripoli so much money. And it didn't work out for the guy in Tripoli, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, another reason is, when they take an oath on the Quran, they basically are lying that they're going to follow the Constitution. It's one of the jihad by the word and pen types of lies that they can tell.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's the second level of jihad. Yes. Yeah, that's an exact quote, actually from the 1915 fatwa. Well done, Sharon. So I wanted to get into a few things that are not necessarily Islam related, but I do have a few other news stories to cover. But I'm curious how many people actually watch the State of the Union. I did not, but there was something that I found rather revealing. And for the first time, I told Larry this earlier, I now know why they picked Kamala Harris as the vice president. I mean, I was saying before they picked her because she was stupid, and like with Obama, they picked someone that was too stupid to take Joe's place, too incompetent, really, truly too incompetent to take his place. So that was the reason. But here's what I learned from the State of the Union address. I don't think she got picked because of who she was. I think she got picked for who her husband was. Because at the State of the Union, Eric knows what I'm talking about. At the State of the Union, Joe Biden's wife kissed Kamala Harris's husband full on the lips. And it was not a nice little kissy kiss. It was something a little deeper. And everyone is turning and watching them. So now I know why Kamala Harris is VP. She didn't get picked because she slept her way to the top. She got picked because her husband did that work for her. And maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. But it sure changed my thoughts on that. I did not expect that answer.
It might have been, and this is what a lot of people have been talking about. It was inadvertent, where they were supposed to kiss each other on the cheek.
You don't kiss inadvertently on the. You don't do that.
I'm just saying they went the wrong way, and they didn't want to go. Oh well, we were, But yeah, I don't know. It's it was.
I like Paul's reason.
I'm not going to even get into that because it would be good.
That's a good one.
That's my first. There was another thing that came up here, and I credit our past White House press secretary, Kelly, and I cannot get her last name.
McInerney. She
asked probably the world's best question this week, and just yesterday at a press interview, or was it today? I'm very, very impressed with her question. It was the 7th she asked this question. She just comes back from work, and that's just 2 days away, and she talks about this one question, and she can't get the press secretary to answer it. And I love this question. So you've all heard about this weather balloon, right? And she's going through and she's asking, she has a question. She wants to be straightened out. This weather balloon that the Pentagon says it saw on such and such a date, I believe it was the 28th. And they didn't inform Joe Biden about it until the 30th. That's 2 days later. The Pentagon releases a report saying they knew about it on the 28th. And then there's the first accounting of this at the White House is on the 30th. So they consider Joe Biden too incompetent to inform for 2 days on something like this. And there's no real answer given on this. The answer was, the topic was ignored. Now, the fact that we have General Milley there, who said he would turn and inform the Chinese if we were to attack them, or if we were going to do an action. Did he tell the Chinese? Or now we can't just ask questions about Joe making a bundle of cash. You've got General Milley in there, because General Milley's over NORAD, correct? You got to start thinking these things. If they didn't inform Joe Biden for 2 days, do they consider him too incompetent to take an action? Or were they considering, well, Mrs. Biden's busy right now with Mr. Harris? We can't inform them. I mean, yeah. I'm going to keep going back to this. Sorry, guys. I think that is probably the best question that has been asked. 2 days, the Pentagon chose not to inform the White House. What does that say about the man in the White House? And there's no reprisal from that being, and that's public information. Anybody who's in the military should be drastically concerned. There's just so much. I've talked to a lot of different people on this who are military, ex-military, whatever, and they talk about, the way the balloon was taken down, that no one did any attempt. There was no, they're talking about bringing in the balloon. Really? You didn't bring in what it was attached to? And a big show of the balloon. Notice there's no big show of what it was attached to. These are huge concerns. And I don't know if anybody else has a thought on that one. I'll open the floor.
I think a lot of times when the president gets his the PDP presidential daily brief, when he gets that daily brief, there's a mountain of intelligence that he is given on a daily basis. Now, what the scary thing might be on this is that this thing is that these balloons or spying apparatus are so prevalent and happen so many times that they probably thought that, well, this is just another incursion of the Chinese trying to surveil us, that it doesn't really need to reach the presidential level. That's the scary side of it. It happens so many times that, well, they just didn't bother to stick it in there until 2 days after it was discovered. But then again, they may have only put it in there because of it got leaked to the press, where the president was finally updated on that. So there's a lot of things that are about this that are just not right. But the one thing that I do know, this is what I do know, is that if the Chinese are reduced to using balloons to surveil our country, what does that tell us where they are technologically? If they are willing to risk just using something that anybody with a good telescope can spot, what are their satellites doing? What type of capability do their satellites have, or more importantly, what type of capabilities don't their satellites have, where they have to resort to this type of surveillance? So there's a lot of questions that this poses, and what it does is I think it exposes the weaknesses within China itself. Is, even though they have 1.4 billion people, that doesn't mean that they all have the same technological advantages that we do, and they obviously don't if they're resorting to spy balloons. We do the same thing to them. We spy on them, but we use satellites, sophisticated satellites, where they have to use balloons.
Well, my understanding. Go ahead.
Bongino the other day had a little bit of a talk about this, and he said back in 2009, the Chinese National Defense University outlined the use of balloons for psychological attack. He said it was like to increase the fear. So and they've been in many countries, those balloons, right?
Yes. They've actually they found them in Canada, they found them in Central America, they found them in South America, and more. I
don't know how it increases the fear. To me, I'm disgusted that our country didn't shoot it down when it was over the Pacific. But what can I say when you got a demented idiot in the White House? But that's what their report was, that it's supposed to be a psychological attack to create fear. I think the the Chinese virus, created more fear than these balloons did.
I think I don't think fear is really. I don't think the fear aspect worked. What I do think
Yeah,
is
neither.
it made people more aware of. Well, you combine that with an awareness of what they did with Wuhan, the Wuhan virology lab.
Yeah,
It's not fear. You now enter a state of awareness, and you're looking at them, and you're wondering. I mean, is this another attempt to declare war?
yeah,
And that's, I think, how it has to be viewed.
Notice they've cut off all communications with us since the downing of that. Also, they haven't. There's been no communication between the United States, official communication between the United States and China since that happened.
Yeah, it's it's crazy. This stuff is, if that's their best technology, yeah, we happen to know it's not. I happen to know that they are highly sophisticated with satellite knowledge, and they are engaged in a lot of space technology, which is kind of mind-numbing when I think about this concept of balloons and what they're putting over.
What do you mean by?
And I don't.
I mean, what do you mean by space technology, satellite tech? How are they sophisticated in that? What do you mean by that?
So they are engaged in much the same that we are with technology, as far as and law, as far as making sure, because I'm the little bit that I'm aware of is because of the indexing work I do. I recently indexed a book for a NASA type scientist who is talking about space debris, and he spends a good part of the book on China and what they are currently engaging in with space debris, and the discussions they're having, and what the rules there. There are all these international, not international, but national organizations and international organizations that are working cooperatively to reduce that. And it's interesting. Just the concepts that they're talking about. It says something. Is this a distraction? Is the other thing we have to consider. What was this a distraction from? In the United States, when the Democrats make a big scandal, you always have to wonder what the distraction is from. So, in this case, since I'm a firm believer that Democrats are communists. If we're still talking about communists, what was this a distraction from? And I don't have a good answer, except for could it be that there was a medical study done that says nobody needs to wear a mask? Shh, can't tell LinkedIn that one. Yeah, there was a medical study released this past week that says certain things should not be worn to protect yourself from things like COVID. And it's kind of mind-numbing. Watch me get a strike for that. Okay. It's this kind of knowledge is just kind of mind-numbing. Next thing up here I had that I wanted to talk about. I don't know if anybody has seen the article out there. It came out on the 7th, of a U.S. man convicted of aiding Islamic State as a sniper trainer. Has anybody seen that article? I'll put the link in the chat room. Now, I've been watching this. This has been on. This article has been on Jihad Watch, and the article I have has too much crap on it on the end of it. Okay, it's for a link. Here we go, and I'll throw this in the chat rooms, and I will throw this in private for everybody else here. So this article I found interesting for the fact that it is on Yahoo News. And it's a 5-minute read, but this is by Jennifer Peltz. And okay, short read. A former New York stockbroker turned ISIS militant was convicted Tuesday of becoming a sniper and trainer for the extremist group during its brutal reign in Syria and Iraq. The trial of Ruslan Maratovich Asinov, a Kazakh-born U.S. citizen. So my first impression when I got that far, has anybody not heard of the Boston bombers? The Boston Marathon bombers? Where were they from? Oh, we're talking about the same region of the world, the same country, Kazakhstan. Oh, okay. And they're talking about this as a surprise. Notice there's no reference to the Boston Marathon bombers in this article. There is no reference to, maybe something's going on here. Maybe we need to be more cautious about people coming from this part of the world. I'm not even saying more cautious because they're following Islam, but maybe we need to be more cautious about people coming from this part of the world, because we've had now two major two attacks. One was very huge, and then we have another guy who goes and acts as a sniper trainer for ISIS. And when do we say is enough is enough? I saw that, and I was just, and that's not the link. Sorry about that. I thought I copied it. For those who are in, I apologize. Let me try this one more time. And I did hit copy. Let's try this one more time. For those in the chat, for in the private room, I guess I put up the wrong link. There we go. And we'll try this one more time in the comments. I did not realize I had messed that one up. Okay, here we go. News. Okay. This is an interesting article, again, just for the fact of sometimes what it doesn't mention. One of the big things I try to tell kids is what is not mentioned is just as important as what is mentioned. This is extremely important, especially with propaganda. So why do they not mention the Boston bombers as being from the same area? This is extremely important to think about. What was the purpose? Why did they hide it? They don't want you asking questions. They don't want you thinking, maybe we should just say no and close off that part of the world from coming to the United States for a while. I'm not saying indefinitely. I'm saying maybe for a while. And how long do you allow this to continue? It's something to think about. This guy was a New York State, he was a New York stockbroker. You've got to think about that. And for the foolish people who think only the ignorant become jihadis, they apparently have not been listening to our discussion on Sharia. Because if you actually study ISIS, the people who joined ISIS were the ones who consider themselves more knowledgeable on Islam. The ones who, when they started this, they considered themselves mullahs. They considered themselves the leaders. ISIS was the creation of Al-Qaeda. And then the caliphate, again, was part of the 10-year plan for Al-Qaeda. When ISIS declared the caliphate, again, this was according to Al-Qaeda's plan. So a lot of this information going that direction, again, following Sharia, following, again, Muslim Brotherhood being in charge of all these groups, the creator of all these groups. Some of these things you just have to sit there and go, what is really going on? I have one last story, and it's not from here, but this is in Op India, and I don't want to leave tonight without discussing this topic. And it is not a clean topic. It is not a fun topic. And I will put this in private chat for everybody. There we go. This article really bothers me. It's from Op India. Convert to Islam or will chop you into pieces like Shradawaka. Ali Khan poses as a man to trap minor Hindu girl, rapes and blackmails her. Accused Ali Khan kidnapped the girl on January 23rd while she was on her way to school and raped her again. This article came out February 4th. In Hapur Uttar Pradesh, a case of attempted forced conversion has come to the forefront, wherein the accused, Ali Khan, lured a minor girl studying in class 11th into a love trap by pretending to be Aman, which is a Hindu. Following this, he blackmailed the girl for 6 months after recording her objectionable videos. Ali Khan also used to put pressure on the victim to convert to Islam and physically attacked her when she refused. He even threatened to cut the girl into pieces like Shraddha Walker if she refused to convert to Islam. In the gruesome Shraddha Walker murder case, the 28-year-old victim, Shraddha Walker, was killed by her live-in partner, Aftab Amin Poonawalla, who chopped up her body and dumped the pieces around the national capital. So now they're giving a horror story as a threat to force people to convert. And this is in India. And I mean, that is, this poor little girl was raped. And this is the peaceful Islam. It is in Sharia. We will be covering this later on as time goes on. These are horror stories. Is it coming to your neighborhood?
Yes.
Yeah. The more that you listen to these talks on Sharia, what it actually says, what it actually means, we'll get to that. It's actually covered in the Quran. It's endorsed in the Quran. It's endorsed in the Hadith. And when we get into Sharia, the section that endorses pedophilic behavior, we will cover it. We may have to make those particular shows 21 and over, but that's the way Islam is, because they unfortunately have to be discussed. Thank you, Damian. Thank you. Religion of pieces, a piece with pieces. That you can't say it any better. Let me put that up there. I gotta find my mouse. He is so right. Or you are so right. I have to say, covering this material is as brief as it is, and it seems like it's going to go on forever because this book is about 600 pages long. May seem like I'm nitpicking. It may seem like I'm going at things too slow. But I think if we don't do that, we're not asking enough questions. We're not preparing ourselves for what's coming. And then I think the people who are too willing to accept without asking any questions are already in trouble. Who am I talking about? Denmark, Sweden, the United Kingdom, Germany, France. I can go on and on and on. They didn't ask any questions. And then under Obama and Biden, what's happened to this country? I can tell you the huge population growth here. This Hijra and the purpose of the Hijra. If you want to read more on the Hijra, I invite you to go to my blog spot or to pick up my last book, The Cancer of Civilization Jihad. Thank you all for listening. Pay attention. We have to get this news out. We have to share this. I'm going to ask that you please share this video. Please share, like and share. Try and get more subscribers so we can get the word out easier. God bless you all. Any last words, Larry and Sharon?
No, thank you. That's all.
So I'm guessing Larry's busy because he's okay. There he is. Okay.
Nope, I just wanted to say thank you also, Paul.
Well, God bless everybody. Give your life to Christ. If you find all this sounds insane, I'm not denying that. does. It does sound insane. So go find out if what we're telling you the truth. We'd like you to do that. Don't just take my word for it. Don't just take anybody's word for it. Don't take Islam's word for it. Go find out if we're telling you the truth. Find out on your own. Discover it on your own. Double check me. Please do that. I don't want to be anyone giving out misinformation. I'd rather have you check and find out if what I'm sharing is factual. Please, please, please do that. It's more important that you find out for yourself than have me just tell you something. That's the way Christianity works. God bless everybody. Thank you all. Good night. All right.